The emblems of the Fifth Macedonian Legion are a bull and an eagle. That's fair enough. Macedonians were persistent, like bulls, and in the heat of battle sometimes soared to such heights that only eagles can do. But I would add a turtle to this pair of symbols, not for its slowness, but for the fact that it lives a long time. Judge for yourself. The Fifth Macedonian was formed half a century before the dawn of the new era, and his last battle was fought in 641st year, 700 years. The Roman Empire has been gone for 2 centuries, and the legion is still in service, the envy of all the dead. The Fifth Macedonian was formed apparently by Octavian before 43 BC, and at first bore another name, the Fifth City. Under this name, the legion's boarding parties eagerly stuck hooks into Mark Antony's ships and worked their swords in the Battle of Cape Actium to defeat and make Gaius Julius Caesar Octavian Augustus the sole master of the Roman state. After the end of the Civil War, the legion is stationed in Macedonia, where it receives its name, which has gone down in history. Here the soldiers with zeal build roads, and then, together with the soldiers of the Fourth Scythian Legion, had to stand in the way of an avalanche of Germanic bastards poured into Thrace. Under the command of Marcus Licinius Crassus, grandson of the Triumvir, the same one who suffered a catastrophic defeat from the Parthians at Carrhae, the Romans crush blond giants and drive them out of the Danube. At the beginning of our era, the Fifth Macedonian changes the place of dislocation, moving to Moesia in Esk, which occupied an important strategic position at the crossroads of 3 major roads. Here a powerful camp is built, which later became a Roman colony, and the legionaries participate in the final conquest of Thrace and its transformation into a Roman province. In the year 62, the eastern page in the life of the Fifth Macedonian opens. At first a small unit, Vexillation of the legion, participates in the campaign of the governor of Cappadocia, Lucius Caecinius Paetus, in Armenia, against the Parthian king Vologeses, which ended in disaster. The Roman army, the basis of which was the 12th Lightning and the 4th Scythian legions, was surrounded and surrendered. Paetus himself escaped. However, a year later, the talented commander Gnaeus Domitius Corbulan assembles a powerful fist of 4 legions, including the Fifth Macedonian. He commands at this time Corbulan's relative Annius Vinicius. The Roman army moves swiftly eastward, crossing the Euphrates, intending as it should to get even with Vologeses for the insult inflicted. However, the Parthian king does not accept the challenge and hurries to make peace. The legion is on a temporary base in Pontus when a large-scale revolt begins in Judea. After the rebels defeated the governor of Syria, Cestius Gallus, the army of the future Emperor Vespasian appears in Judea. Under his command is also the Fifth Macedonian, which at this time commands the legate Sextius Cereales. An eyewitness of those events, Josephus Flavius, who described in detail the Judean war, honors the Macedonian legion with the epithet excellent. Especially Macedonians are distinguished when storming the sacred mountain of the Samaritans, Gezerim. Josephus Flavius tells in detail about the circumstances of that operation. To climb the mountain and enter into battle with the enemy who was on top Syrial, in view of the large number of the latter, considered unwise. Instead, he cordoned off the mountain with his detachments from all sides and watched him all day long. The Samaritans were suffering from lack of water, and they had not prepared the most necessary supplies, so that some died of thirst the same day, and many, preferring slavery to such a painful death, went over to the Romans. When Syrial learned from them that those who remained above were also utterly exhausted from their sufferings, he ascended the mountain and lined up in a circle, enclosing the enemy in the midst. At first he challenged them to voluntary surrender, exhorted them not to destroy themselves, and promised at the same time to spare the life of him who would lay down his arms. But seeing that his words made no impression, he attacked them and ordered them all to be exterminated. Thus unhappily ended the Samaritans. 3 years later, the Fifth Macedonian, along with 3 other legions under the command of Vespasian's son Titus, participates in the siege of Jerusalem and perhaps makes a decisive contribution during the storming of the city. Macedonians capture the key outpost of the defense of the Holy City, the fortress of Antonia, after which they seize the temple complex. Probably the black page in the life of the legion is the massacre that was carried out in Jerusalem, in which the soldiers of the Fifth Macedonians undoubtedly take part. Macedonians, after 20 years of absence, returned to Esk. The legionaries did not have to be bored for long. The first war with the Dacians begins, and it was started by barbarians. King Decebalus invades Moesia. Dacians rob and devastate the Roman province. Emperor Domitian sends an expedition against the barbarians Cornelius Fusca, but he suffers a brutal defeat, and the 5th Legion of the Larks completely perishes. The following year, the Romans make a new attempt to break into Dacia. In the campaign, which commands the consul Lucius Tetius Julianus, this time participates and the 5th Macedonian, and this, as we know, a good omen. Under the place Tapai Tetius manages to defeat the Dacians. Legionaries are raring to new feats. They are ready to completely subdue the Dacians, but the rebellion in Gaul and the invasion of the Germans do not allow to continue the war. By the way, at this time in the 5th Macedonian serves Hadrian, the future Roman emperor. In Dacia, Macedonians return 13 years later under the most militant Roman emperor Marcus Ulpia Trajan. In a series of campaigns, Trajan manages to conquer Dacia and make it a Roman province. After this, the 5th Macedonian moves from Escus to the northeast. The new camp of the legion becomes Tresmus at the mouth of the Danube, where a new fortified base is erected, which should stand in the way of the barbarians. In the 115th year, parts of the legion is part of a powerful army under the command of Trajan himself, trying to bring Parthia to its knees. And 3 years later, already under the new emperor Hadrian, Macedonians, again involved on the Danube, reflect the attack of Roxolans, who tried to break through the Roman border. Later, detachments of the legion Hadrian throws to suppress another uprising in Judea. Under the banners of Hadrian's best military leader Sextus Julius Severus, the 5th Macedonian step-by-step dislodges from the mountain fortresses detachments of the rebel leader Shimon bar Kokhba, who declared himself the new Messiah. Other parts of the legion participate in the annexation of Crimea. At this time, the Bosporan kingdom, unable to contain the onslaught of barbarians, turned for help to Rome. In the Crimea found several tombstones of Roman soldiers from several legions, including Macedonians. After that, a new trip to the east as part of the army of Statius Priscus, 5th Macedonian, once again smashes Parthians and helps to occupy Armenia. Returning to Europe, the legion moves to a new base, this time in Dacia, in Potaissa. Emperor Marcus Aurelius fights a lot with the Marcomanni, Quadians, and Sarmatians, occasionally testing the Roman limes. The 5th Macedonian actively participates in these battles. At this time, the legion is commanded by white-faced African Clodius Albinus, who will soon take part in another civil war, and his native legion will fight on the side of his opponent. In 193-year Danube legions, including the 5th Macedonian, proclaimed Emperor Septimius Severus, he goes on a campaign to Rome, then within 4 years to deal with competitors. Among them is Albinus, who gained support in Gaul, Spain, and Britain. Initially, the North adopted him, appointed him Caesar, and expressed his willingness to share power, but then started a war and eventually defeated him at the Battle of Lugdun. In the 3rd century, an era of total crisis, soldier emperors, and bloody coups, the 5th Macedonian Legion receives its major titles, probably reflecting the legion's battle honors in battles against barbarians on the Danubian frontier and rival emperors in the struggle for the Roman throne. The merits of the 5th Macedonian are reflected on coins. After Emperor Aurelian was forced to abandon Dacia at the end of the 3rd century, the legion returns to the place where, in fact, and began his fighting career, in Esk. The Emperor Diocletian managed to end the crisis of the 3rd century. One of his tools was military reform. Diocletian divided all Roman armed forces into 2 main components, field armies and frontier units. The 5th Macedonian joins the field army stationed on the lower Danube. Apparently, even under Diocletian, a large cavalry unit is allocated from the legion, which is sent to the east, to war with the Persians. After the fighting in Mesopotamia, Macedonian cavalrymen go to the Egyptian Memphis, and the capital of the pharaohs becomes the place of permanent deployment of this unit. Here he, having joined the ranks of the army of the Eastern Roman Empire, remains for a very long time, up to the moment when the Arabs appear in Egypt, perhaps to the last victory of the Byzantines over the Arabs in Egypt, in 641st year at Sebennyt, had a hand in the soldiers of the famous Fifth Macedonian Legion,